Hi everyone, I'm Dan Albers and welcome to Redskin Review. It's a special edition with the basketball side. We haven't done a basketball in quite a long time. Joining me, or we're going to introduce and talk about the men's basketball coach, Chris DeLotell, and we're also going to talk about this upcoming season. And Chris, you and I know we've been trying to do this for a while, and we both kind of been busy, but I appreciate you joining us today.
Absolutely, Dan.
We talked about you've been been at Anderson here now for 3 years. This is the third year,
right.
And you've got you let everyone to kind of know where you came from, like basketball wise, where you played basketball at, and how you got into coaching basketball.
Yeah, well, I came to Anderson from Mason. I was an assistant there. I was the varsity assistant there my last 2 years. Also played there, so it was kind of the hometown kid when I got hired back there and was an assistant after I had played and gone to college at Kentucky, and then was hired now 2+ years ago. Now it's my third year as the head coach here, and it's been just tremendous for me, for our family. My wife teaches at Wilson Elementary now. So,
wow.
We moved to Anderson this summer. We have a daughter who's 1, so we're Anderson Township all the way now, and on both sides of the township with my wife at Wilson. So
that's great.
So we're just really thrilled to sort of be all in Anderson.
Well, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I was trying to look up at some things. Wasn't your dad a coach, and so you kind of got that pedigree of the coaching through your father?
Yeah, that's very true. I grew up around it. My dad was a head coach at Finneytown and at Indian Hill, and then he was an assistant at a number of different places and was a teacher and a guidance counselor. So certainly grew up in the gym and going to camps and working camps, and so it was kind of a natural progression for me just having been around it. Once my playing career was over, which was very much at the end of high school. To move into being a coach.
At the time that you were at Mason, was Anderson and Mason still in the same league at the time? So did you play against Anderson?
Yeah, we did. There were some really good Anderson teams. My freshman year was, I think, one of Coach Brandy's best teams in what was that, like 01, 02?
I think that might have been with Shoemaker and Pat Swald and those guys.
Yeah, they were tough. And then my senior year was a good group with the older Wilkeson.
Oh yeah, Julian.
So that was a good rivalry back in the days of the FABC.
Yeah. Saying it about Frank having a good team. Frank obviously is in the Hall of Fame. He's been here a long time. Been a long time coach. You come in and how difficult or hard was that coming in after a guy that's been here a long time?
It was made tremendously easier by Frank. He and I have developed a good relationship. He's been extremely helpful to me, just in sort of understanding the lay of the land and why is this done this way, or why is this set up this way, or how does this work, was really been helpful for me. And now Frank's got a son in the program. Michael's a freshman, so Frank's it's kind of full circle. Frank's gone from coach to parent. I told him he's not allowed to send me any emails complaining. But he's been great, a great help for me to transition into it. I think anytime there's change, it's not necessarily good or bad. It's just different. And so that's always a sort of a transition and a process of things being done maybe in a little bit different way. But I knew when I was hired I was taking over for a legend, a Hall of Famer as a player and as a coach, and he's been extremely welcoming to me. And the way it's worked out now, I have 2 coaches on my staff who are on Frank's staff.
Really?
And Bob Mullinax and Dave Giulio, both of my varsity assistants, were guys who coached for Frank. So we've really been able to, sort of in the transition of things, still keep that attachment, which I like to sort of, I don't want to call it the past, but sort of all the success that Frank had.
And Dave Giulio, I remember watching Dave play. He played with my brother, and he was a shooter, man. He can shoot the lights out. So.
He would tell you that he still is.
he still plays in those alumni games, and he still tries to shoot it.
He comes to practice sometimes with his ankle braces on, ready to go. He's over there stretching, and our guys know he's feeling ready to play that.
And he still does the rocket, I'm sure.
Yes,
he does the rocket. I know that. Well, correct me if I'm wrong or right on this, but I think your first year here was 2014. Is that correct?
13-14.
Yeah. And that first year, you guys won 1 league game, I believe. You guys were 4-19. Talk with a new coach coming in. You're trying to teach what you want and what you want to do, and like you said, it's about change. How tough was that to keep the kids focused on what you wanted to do and keeping them on that same path?
Well, I think Marvin Lewis, when he was in his first year with the Bengals, and they were good for the first time in quite some time, said winning makes working hard easier. So there's that element that you're always probably going to fight when you aren't seeing the success on the scoreboard. But our guys from year one have been tremendous about being bought into doing things the way that they're coached. So we've not had that issue that you talked about in terms of our competitiveness in practice and in guys doing what they're instructed. I think more than anything, we've had sort of this 2 or 3 year process of just gaining experience. That team the first year we had one player who had ever played in a varsity game, and so you know as a coach that's a huge challenge when you have a team that doesn't have a lot of experience. Now the other side of that is this year we have 12 players who've scored in a varsity game, so we're in a tremendously different place just in terms of the experience level at the start than we were at that point.
And you guys made big improvements from year 1 to year 2. Last year, you ended up winning 11 games. You won more league games. And I was going back and thinking about, there was a stretch where you had 2 games that kind of, for me as a former player too, that really I think maybe turned a corner. Was you had a real close game with Kings, and then the next game was Walnut, and you lost maybe by 6 or 7. Do you agree that might have been a part where you guys were playing better, or where do you guys feel like last year you thought maybe you were turning the corner a little bit more?
Yeah. People like that phrase, turn the corner, and a lot of people ask, about that same kind of idea, and we really don't buy into the turning the corner thing.
Right.
Like we see it, our word for this year's team is climb, and each letter stands for a different thing, and we can get into that, but we sort of see it as just this sort of continual progression upwards. So I'm really hesitant to say ever that we've turned the corner or we will turn the corner, because I don't know what's around the corner once we turn it. So I think the big thing about last year for us was we felt like that we had made really tremendous strides from where we were in year 1, and I think what that did is it validates the hard work of our players, because kids will work hard for you, just like all of us in our jobs. You'll work hard, but boy, you want to see some sort of result, some sort of positive progress to your hard work to make you feel like it's worth it. And so I thought that was a great thing of last year, was to improve by 7 wins from the first year. I think made our guys feel like their hard work was paying off in the win column.
And a lot of that hard work led to winning a first postseason game in quite a long time. That had to have been gratifying too.
There's great value in winning a tournament game, and in where we are, our school size and sort of the way the OHSAA breaks it down, the tournament is a huge challenge for us, and is always going to be. It's not an impossibility, but it's a challenge, and it was the first time I think in 3 years that Anderson had won a tournament game, and it's a great positive way to end your season. Every team in the state, with the exception of 4, 1 in each division, is going to end their season with a loss.
Right.
So you're going to lose your last tournament game unless you're one of those 4 teams. But for us to be able to extend our season by beating a team that was very similar to us was a great way to head into the offseason with some momentum.
And it's a lot different. Obviously everybody knows out there that we do a lot of the football games, and the football playoffs and the basketball playoffs are 2 totally different things. In the football, you're Division II, and that basketball you're not. And you've got the St. X's, the Mollers, the Elder. So it's a lot. Kind of explain a little bit for people, they might not understand how that breaks down.
Yeah. So in football, there's 7 divisions. So the breakdowns. The gap in school size is a little bit smaller in each division in football, because there's more of them than it is in basketball or any other sport, where there are in most other sports 4 divisions. So we are on the low end of Division I, which I don't know off the top of my head, but I think it's somewhere around 900 or 1,000 students. We have around 1,200. Also in Division I are the biggest schools in the state. So the Masons with 3,800, or the all boys schools with 1,500 boys. So it's certainly a little bit of a challenge in the tournament, but we're really big on, boy, let's control the things that we do, which is us. We can't control those things, so let's be the best team we can be. And we think that when we're at that point, which we believe we're headed towards being right there, that we can be extremely competitive in the Division I tournament.
I guess I'm confused at, for the football, is it just because they have so many guys on the team, 75 guys, or how many guys on a team, to make them Division II? I know they go by male enrollment. Is that correct? Is that how they do it?
Correct.
But what changes between football and basketball? I guess I don't get that.
It's a great question. It's a question a lot of basketball coaches are asking. I think some of it is financial. You know, the football playoffs are the biggest moneymaker for the OHSAA. So I think they've determined that you can have 7 divisions in football and 7 playoffs and 7 state championships and do fine financially, whereas in other sports, the more divisions you have, the more cost there is to put on the tournament, and the expenses don't work out quite as well. So I think there's some element of it that's financial as much as anything.
And I think another thing too might be the fact that everybody's in, no matter what the record is, and I think that might be another thing too.
Right.
Let's get a little bit into, let's go into this year's team expectations and some players. I only know of a couple. I haven't been right around the program as much as I would like to, but I know Blake White obviously is a player that I know from football, and I've been around him since he was a little kid. He's a great kid. Hopefully he'll be okay to play. I know he's got a bum shoulder. And you also got Chris Newton's son. I think Jake is on the team as well. A couple guys that I remember. Talk a little bit about some of the players you got and some expectations for this year.
Yeah, well, like I mentioned before, 12 guys who've scored in a varsity game. So for one, I hope that the lights of 7:30 shouldn't be too much for us, because we've got that experience of having been there. We've got 9 seniors, so that's as many as probably I'll ever coach on a team here. And all of them are going to play. We don't have any of those 9 seniors who are sort of just guys who are just around. They're players for us. So Blake's a third-year starter as a senior. If he would start this year, he's still working his way back from his football injury. He's back into practice right now, but I wouldn't say he's 100%, and I know he wouldn't say that. D'Anthony McCallum is a 3-year starter as a senior. Has led us in scoring the last 2 years and has really improved. His outside shot, he's become very, very difficult to guard. DeAndre McCallum has started for us in parts of the last 3 years, now as a senior. So we certainly have those guys who are battle tested in varsity games. Jake Newton started for us last year at the point as a sophomore, and was as important a player as a sophomore as anybody who we had. I think led us in minutes played as a sophomore, which was way more than we expected or thought we would get from Jake. Maybe in October or November, he had a great year. So certainly we're going to be expecting that Jake has an even better year this year with having a year of experience. Ben Summers, a guy as a junior this year who we really thought would get a lot of minutes last year as a sophomore. He had a couple of injuries, a back injury, and he's been healthy here in the preseason and has been good for us. So I could name the whole roster because they all 12, 13, 14 guys are going to be able, we think, to contribute for us in games. But those guys have really been doing a great job. I
got to see Jake Newton play. Obviously, got to see you guys play against Marymount, and was very impressed with Jake. He could score if he needs to score. He can also dish if he needs. I think it's very important to have a point guard on your team that's able to do both things. He can score if he needs to, and he can also pass. You agree with that?
Yeah, and we're this year's team. We feel like we're positionless because we don't have the traditional back to the basket post player, which is. Sometimes, of course, a negative because you love to be able to have a big guy to throw it in there and turn and score, but we really feel like it's a positive because I think it makes us harder to guard. We hope we can play more in transition with a little bit of pace and tempo, maybe more so than we've done in the past. And so Jake is a point guard, but Jake could sometimes be a shooting guard or a wing player. And so we've got guys like Jake who have a skill set that doesn't limit them to just he's only a passing point guard or just he's only a shooting guard. We feel like we can have guys and not have to assign them a certain specific role or job at a certain time because they can just play.
What about defensively? Do you guys like to? You were talking about kind of running or whatever. You guys like pressing a lot, not pressing a lot defensively? What do you like to do? More man, more zone? Is it just kind of depending on who you're playing and what's going on?
Well, we very much believe in man. Because we think you have to know how to defend people man-to-man before you can defend them zone anyway, because zone is man-to-man in an area. So we very much believe in man. The thing about our league, I heard a talk, Jay Wright, the coach at Villanova a year or so ago, talked about how you've got to have a system that allows you to be able to beat the best teams in your league. or else you're not setting yourself up to be as good as you can be. In our league, with the sort of different competition, the Milford and Kings and the Walnut and Withrow, as I'm thinking, and Turpin, I would put in that category as well. I'd put Milford, Kings, Level, and Glen Estee maybe in one category, and Walnut, Withrow, and Turpin maybe in another category in terms of style of play. So if we're going to be able to beat the best teams in our league, we've got to be able to defend in multiple ways well. So we very much believe that starts with solid man-to-man half-court defense. But we also think, especially with feeling like we have some athleticism this year, that we'd like to be able to speed things up defensively also, with some trapping, some run and jump pressure, either in the half court or full court. So I think in football you'd call that system multiple, right? So I think our goal is that we can be multiple on defense, that we can have different things we can go to based on that moment in the game or the opponent who we're playing that gives us the best chance.
But talking about that with your conference, we'll kind of wrap this thing up. Your conference, we talked about Milford, Kings, Walnut, Turpin. Those are the top teams that you guys had last year. Do you expect the same from those teams possibly? I know you kind of put Turpin, Glen Estee in there too. Well, but who is expected to win the league this year?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it changes so much from year to year with graduations and changes. And I read just the other day, I think Walnut's got a number of transfers who've moved in this year. I think they have 3 guys that are sort of waiting on rulings from the OHSAA for transfers. And I think obviously Milford is always solid. They're so well coached, and a system. They graduated a number of good players, but their JVs were awfully good, and they've got important varsity players back. Kings, I think, similar to Milford, really a solid system in place, great coaches. They'll be strong again. I think Turpin, it will be very good. They've got 2 really good guards who are back from last year's team.
Is one of Bostic?
No, he graduated, but Brandon Holiday and their point guard Baker are both really, really hard to guard. So I think Turpin will be very good. Loveland's got a new coach, Rob Reese, a guy who I coached with at Mason. He was an assistant there when I was. They'll be really well coached, and they'll be fundamentally sound. They've got a great player back in Plitt, their quarterback from football, who was first team All-League in basketball last year.
Waddell still play too?
I don't believe so. But Plitt will be really, really good for them. Glen Estee has a new coach, and they've got important guys back. Gardner, who I think is a League Player of the Year candidate. Johnson, who's a junior, who's very athletic and can shoot it. Withrow has a new coach. And they were really young last year. They were playing all sophomores, and they've got all those guys back. They've got 2 of the top scorers in the league back. So I really think our league is. There's nobody that we look at in our league and say, man, they're down and that's 2 wins. We are certainly not looking at it that way at all. I think our league is really even across the board. I think it's the kind of year that somebody wins the league going 10-4. Because I think on a given night,
anybody can.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those deals. Last year it was sort of there were the 4 at the top with Walnut, Kings, Milford, and Turpin, and then there were the other 4 of us at the bottom, and there was nobody really around 500. I think you're going to have a much different
tighter
this year. Yeah.
You guys open the season, I believe, the 28th, and you're going to play Indian Hill team. I was kind of a little familiar with them. I watched them a couple of times. Always seem to have a couple tall guys, and they also got a couple guys maybe that could shoot the ball. What do you expect out of Indian Hill? I mean, do you go and watch some of their scrimmages, obviously, kind of get a grip on them? And I know their coach there has been there for a while, and he does a really good job.
They're a solid opponent for us because they're well coached. They're usually very good. I like playing them non-league. They have almost everyone back. I feel like I say that about everyone. But they've got, last year I thought that their 3 best players were a junior, a sophomore, and a freshman. And their freshman was first team All-League.
Really good.
And so they've got experience also. I think we caught them last year in game 1, and they were not as experienced because they were young last year, and they didn't shoot real well, and we sort of escaped with a win over there. They've got some experience now that I think makes them a tough game 1 opponent. It's a great question you ask about the scouting part. We really love to scout. We try to get out and see everybody as much as possible, and feel like maybe that's an advantage we can gain as coaches for our kids. The start of the year is frustrating for me because you can't get out and see people. So there's a little bit of that unknown. you do find out who people are scrimmaging, and actually Indian Hill and Turpin are scrimmaging today. So hopefully the Forest Hill School District can work together and figure out a way to maybe get some film and a little bit of a scouting report there. So we'll find out what we can, and of course they've got guys back from last year, so we'll review statistics and film from last season. And, but that all being said, it's really more about us. You know, we know what things we need to do to be successful. We can't control a lot of what they do, so let's do what we do the best we can, and hopefully start the year off here at home with a 1-0 record.
Yeah, I'm sure you got to do a lot of adjustments too. You might see something in a scrimmage that you're not probably going to see that first game, and you got to adjust on the fly as the game's going on.
And in scrimmages, people don't wear numbers. So
that's exactly right. Yeah.
You know, we have something that we've done that I'm really proud of. We're undefeated in season openers in my career at Anderson.
Good.
So we'd like to keep that going this year. We beat Finneytown the first year in a 48-44 barn burner, and last year at Indian Hill, I think it was 2-1, about 3 minutes to go in the first quarter. And we missed our first 17 shots, if I remember right. That first game of the season, and hopefully a lot of people are planning to come, but hopefully they're not coming expecting San Antonio Spurs versus Golden State Warriors, because that first game you got the nerves, and it's the first time you've done it, and it's sort of, even our guys who've been there before, it's the first time in 9 months they've played in a game, and so you kind of have to battle through in the first quarter there, just the butterflies, and you get a little out of breath, and you get nervous, and got to get into the flow of the game a little bit. So that first game you're always nervous because you don't know exactly what's going to happen as a coach. You really never do, but especially in the first game, because you don't know how people are going to react and respond. So I'm hopeful we can on Saturday just get through that first quarter and then sort of get into a little bit of a rhythm and be who we are.
You as a coach, I know I used to, when I played, even though I didn't play that much, I got butterflies too before the game. Do you, as a coach, every game, do you still feel those kind of butterflies too, or is it kind of wore off and it's not that?
I think it becomes a little more routine. I can remember, my first game as head coach. I was talking to Coach Brandy during the day, and of course I'm already, a nervous wreck. You've kind of waited your whole life for this opportunity. It's your first game, and I was taking Imodium all day long, and I called Frank, and just saying, talking about the day, and he goes, well, all the games I coached, 20 plus years, and I'll never forget my first game.
I won't either.
I said, Frank, you're not helping me right now by making this any more important than it already feels like it is to me. So, I think if that feeling ever wears off completely, I should quit.
Right. Right.
One of the reasons that you love doing it is because you get that sort of energy inside of you that it's coming. So rather than think about it as butterflies, I'd rather think about it as excitement, the season coming. And so, this week's kind of a long week because we've been practicing for a month, and you know that game's right there around the corner, but you got 6 days, 5 days, 4 days. We have a countdown every day in practice. So the big challenge for us right now is let's just be better. Let's just be better today than we were yesterday. We want our guys to have as much as in like their school life, we want them to think about like long term, like what's on the horizon. And in basketball, boy, we want them to think about right now. That's all I want them worried about, because that's all we can control. So once we get to next Saturday, I'm sure there'll be a little bit of butterflies, but it won't be anything like it was 2 years ago for me. And I don't think for our guys either, because we have a lot of the same guys that we had 2 years ago
are playing
with the experience we have. So hopefully it's a little bit of a calmer start for everybody.
Well, I'll tell you right now that I'll let you know that you've probably beat Frank in that aspect, because the reason I remember Frank's first game is he coached my brother Tim, and his first game he ended up passing out in the locker room after the game. They won the game, and he passed out in the locker room. So I know that you didn't do that, so that's a good thing.
I haven't done that. We had a game here against Withrow last year. We won by 3 and kind of escaped, and we got here in our locker room after the game, and players are laughing at me because I had like hives all over my face because the fourth quarter had been kind of intense. So I think I got some Benadryl. So we got a lot of medications we got to keep me on to get through the season, but heart's still ticking.
That's good. Well, I really appreciate taking the time. I know you're very, very busy with the season, and hopefully throughout the season we'll pick some times to, whenever you do have some time, and we'll just kind of review and go over the season and how everybody's doing. So I appreciate taking the time to do this.
Thanks, Dan.
All right.
Thanks a lot.
So for Dan Albers and Chris DeLotell, and also on a camera, John Raymond helping us out here for Redskin Review. We'll catch you next week or next time on Redskin Review.